Well, hello everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I'd like to bring your attention to a few housekeeping items before we get started. This presentation is being recorded, and great news, we're going to send you a link to view it on demand after the presentation is over. On the right side of the screen, you will see icons that will allow you to engage with us via live chat and Q&A. Feel free to ask a question at any time using the Q&A widget, and we'll answer them once the presentation is complete. To kick us off, I'd like to tell you a little bit about our presenters. I am David Moore, the Associate VP of Marketing here for Searce, and I'll be kicking off this call and moderating it. I'd like to turn it over to John to introduce himself and his UBIX team.
Thank you, David, and thank you all for your time. We're excited to be talking to you with our partner, Searce, about what UBIX and Searce are doing to conquer AI in business. My background, I started my career at Price Waterhouse, did mergers and acquisition advisory, corporate turnaround, bankruptcy restructuring, forensic accounting, and fraud investigations, and enough audit hours to get my CPA. And then the dot-coms, I was in the technology practice. The dot-coms started percolating, so one of my clients, a pioneer in SaaS-based web analytics, a company called Website Story, hired me out to run finance, operations, and IT. And we grew it from a 20-person company to, I think when we sold, it was about 1,500 in 7 different countries. We were a public company, and we sold to Adobe. And so what Adobe Analytics is what we built between us and the company we merged with, Omniture, in the late 90s, early 2000s. And then it was 2008 timeframe when we sold, and I started Boss Corporation, which was a turnaround consulting firm. Did 7 turnarounds in 7 years, 12 acquisitions. And then I started a company with my business partner at UBIX, Miles Mahoney, where we started Osprey Data, which was predictive analytics and autonomous control in oil and gas and other industrial pursuits. And we sold that off to a field services company. And then we started UBIX. And so UBIX actually today, August 22nd, 7 years ago, was our foundation. And so we're a 7-year-old company, and we built UBIX to really make this technology ubiquitous, right? Our name stands for ubiquitous. It's UBIX. And it was to bring everything to basically bring AI to everyone, right? That's our goal, and that's what we've accomplished.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jack Borey. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer here at UBIX, and I come from a broad background in tech as well as both B2B and B2C marketing. As a self-professed nerd in marketers' clothing, I thrive on the opportunity we have here to bring the power of AI to everyone, like we're doing here with Searce.
And I attest to his nerd statement.
Very much so. I wear it with pride.
Yes.
Awesome. Hey, this is RK. I'm one of the co-founders and CTO at CloudSide. About me, I started my career as a DBA, Microsoft SQL Server. I've been a cloud practitioner for more than a decade now, hands-on with all major public cloud platforms, especially GCP. I'm excited to be having this conversation with you all today. So.
Thank you, RK.
Wonderful, thanks. Yeah, so for a quick agenda today, we'll be doing some introductions into Searce and UBIX so everybody understands what we do here. And then we'll dive into the state of analytics and AI and cloud computing and talk a little bit about how that data leads us to the need to democratize AI with no-code applications. And close it out with some real-world application and success stories. And then we'll have plenty of time for some interactive Q&A session. So a little bit about Searce. Searce is a engineering-led modern technology consultancy firm that empowers clients to futurify by delivering real business outcomes. We are a global organization with offices in 10 countries spanning AMER, APAC, and EMEA. Our team of 1,300 solvers approach challenging problems with a consultative mindset, combining AI, cloud, and data technology with forward-thinking implementation strategies. With over 3,000 customers to date and over 20 years of experience, We're big enough to scale, but nimble enough to get the job done right. I'll kick it over to John to talk a little bit about UBIX.
Yeah, thank you, David. And so UBIX was, like I talked about a little bit before, is that our goal was to bring this capability to everyone. And so certain things that you'll see when we talk about UBIX in this presentation is that, we are the only end-to-end turnkey intelligent cloud in the market. That means that you can be up and running same day with UBIX's capability across all things end-to-end analytics, from talking integrations into source data, your big data store in the cloud, your modeling environment, your application environment, your APIs environment, right? Your production environment. All of those things are up and running within usually about an hour. And it's your own virtual private cloud. It makes things very secure. You can dictate your scaling policy. And UBIX is really focused in on making the hard easy, right? And so we spent all the time to make this easy and adaptable for you as the customer. But because with UBIX, unlike the other trends within the industry of having to build all this stuff, UBIX gets it up and running immediately, right? So you focus 0% of your time on building infrastructure and 100% of your time on solving your core problems, right? And so that's really what we set out to achieve 7 years ago today. And that's why we're growing so fast, is that we really kind of meet customers where they are and bring these insights forward. And so we have a bunch of partners, an ever growing list. Searce is one of our good partners through our relationship with GCP. And then we also have a powerful relationship with Kyndryl, Boomi, SAP, Sage, Sapphire, et cetera, right? And a few more that are closing this month. So it's a pleasure to be talking with you today, and I look forward to diving into these topics.
Yeah. So basically, I'd like to talk a little bit about the Searce and UBIX Labs partnership. So Searce has, with the experience that Searce's engineers have gathered over the period of last decade or so, they have become an extension of clients' engineering teams in multiple scenarios, and then help them deploy really, complex workloads on public cloud platforms in general, especially GCP, AWS, and Azure. They have also worked with customers of all shapes and sizes, like from a really small startup to large conglomerate. And by virtue of all of this, we got an opportunity to handle multiple environments, different kinds of environments, right? While today's topic is more about AI and the power of AI, generative AI, we all know that it is transformational and exciting. But I actually wanted to bring your attention to what powers all of this, right, in general, right? So in order for you to actually build a solution using generative AI, you need data. And how you ingest this data, at what frequency does it come, how you store it, what databases do you use, how do you secure it, how do you govern it? Basically, the platform that actually hosts all of this and makes AI innovations possible, which is basically the infrastructure, that is also equally important, right? And this is where basically the combination of Searce and UBIX Labs, the partnership, brings a lot of value for its customers. While Searce understands, how to run things at a scale in any public cloud platform in GCP. UBIX Labs actually brings the necessary tools for you to derive value out of your data, with minimal effort, right? So over to John to talk more about this. So, John.
Yeah. Thank you, RK. Yeah, so the Searce has been our partner, in moving on to GCP. And so UBIX is, and we had certain demands, right? Because UBIX is a intelligent cloud, so it intelligently provisions, it intelligently scales, right? It's entirely infrastructure as code, and so there are certain things that are unique to different cloud providers, right? Versus AWS, Azure, GCP, Oracle, et cetera, right? They all have their different capabilities, but one of the tenets that is mandatory for UBIX is that it can intelligently scale, intelligently provision resources. So what does that mean, right? There's such a tight coupling between using AI and infrastructure, right? And all this cake that you see here on the screen are all important pieces. But when you think about training a model or running that model in production, there's different capabilities that are needed from the infrastructure. And so infrastructure is not separate from AI. AI and infrastructure are tightly coupled, right? And that's why a lot of challenges have come out, because a lot of times people, when they're going to build their own infrastructure, they've built up to where they've got just let's say a cloud set up. It's not intelligently provisioned. It's not necessarily efficient. It's got their data stored in the cloud, but then they're doing all of their modeling environment in Jupyter notebooks and ETL and other things like that. And so you're now breaking the fluidity of the process, right? And so with UBIX, you can do everything end to end within one system. And we focus on no code, right? So it's engineered science. It allows you to do all the things you would like to do around coding, but you're just using these capabilities. So the QA and the productionization all becomes very smooth. And so we'll talk about a little bit more about that in some of the subsequent slides.
Yeah, and that leads us nicely into kind of what is happening with AI in the market, the challenges that people are facing. We're hearing a ton of buzz about it, and as here at Searce, I know we talk with a lot of people and run a lot of pilots and proof of concepts to help people get started with AI. But we really wanted to understand what was driving these things forward, what challenges were the market seeing in general, and why were they willing to take these risks. And so if you go back just one slide to the study, we recently published this AI report, the 2024 State of AI study, and we polled 300 C-suite and senior technology executives from organizations across both the US and UK with at least $500 million in revenue. So these are enterprise level organizations. We conducted the study in June and July, so it just happened, and we just released this to really examine what are the biggest trends companies experience as they try to unlock AI growth. And so, here are two of the key findings that we do have. That if you want to download the whole report, there's a QR code up there on the screen, and I'll also chat a link to do that within the chat. But I'll kick it over to John and RK to kind of talk through what these numbers mean to them.
Yeah, and so thank you, David, and great study. I definitely encourage you all to download that and go through it. It is a good, fair interpretation of what we see in the market all the time, right? And what you see here around kind of 98% of organizations saying, I want to be moving forward in AI. I've got this as one of my critical initiatives. That's a good thing, right? Because everyone should be doing this, right? Because these technologies are available to you, and they are profoundly better than the manual, tedious things that you're doing now, right? You just need to make it easier for you to consume them, and that's why we exist, right, at UBIX. But the next number here, where you look at 14%, it's a bit damning and a bit of an indictment on what we saw in the market 7 years ago, right? The reason we created UBIX was because the journey to become an AI-driven organization was fraught with challenges, fraught with disaster, right? And only the very large companies with very large budgets could go on that journey, right? Because you needed to build your infrastructure, right? And yes, the cloud providers have been making that easier to where you have these different components that you can use from, but it's a big engineering effort, right? And so you're bringing that to life. And so you've got a long build time, somewhere, on average, 14 to 18 months of build, right? Before you're getting to any benefits of insights, right? And then in that insights journey, you're now having to then, because that's just the build, then you're having to connect all your data sources. Then you're going to have to hire the team of data scientists. They're going to be working in tools that they're accustomed to that are not part of your infrastructure. And so there's a number of other statistics, like there was a study done by IBM a few years back that was talking about 87% of models that have efficacy never reach production, right? And why is that? It's because of this broken process, right? Is that, the data scientists are working with Jupyter notebooks or other tools to do data science, right? But data scientists are not necessarily production engineers. They're statisticians, mathematicians, et cetera, right? That are using these tools to write this stuff. And so when it's handed over to your IT organization, for them to get that technology up and running is fraught with challenges. A lot of times much more costly to bring that model to life than it was to solve the problem to begin with, right? And so that's why UBIX 100% of models that have efficacy reach production, because the only thing you have to do is click one button and say productionize, right? And it brings the application to life. It creates the data space workspace for all the derived data that comes from those analytics workflows. All of the analytic pipelines and workflows are triggered, and it's feeding off of live data, right? So UBIX creates a live data environment. All of these other clouds are dead data environments. It's ETL, pull out, separate and distinct, tool sets that are being used to solve the problem. And a lot of times, even just getting back to where the data came from was a challenge, right? And so UBIX, you see full lineage from the direct source tables that it originated from, all the way through to every decision you've made within solving that problem, the applications you built, et cetera, right? So we felt, this whole statistic that's on this page is the business thesis for UBIX, is because I love these technologies. I've been deep into the analytics game since the late 90s. And I love this technology, and I really wanted to bring it to where everyone can benefit from it. And I've been a guy running businesses for the last 25 years. And so I know the challenges that you face. And so we're in the science of solving business problems, right? We're not here to cure cancer or do other things like that. We're focusing on your business problems and allowing these amazing technologies to actually serve you and work for you and deliver value. And so, and UBIX can get you up and running faster than anyone else.
Great points, John. I also wanted to add from our experience this year in 2024, every second conversation that we had with the customers, it was about Gen AI, right? So they also agree with the findings of this study that, AI is the thing to do. Everybody wants to do something with it. But then, some of these conversations, start with a POC. But most, like John mentioned earlier, most of these models never end up in production. And there are multiple reasons for it. And some of them John already talked about. But, the lack of data culture in an organization, lack of the necessary data, or sometimes, it's just the use case itself is not defined properly, right? So these are some of the problems. And I've also seen, the data-driven aspirations versus what ends up happening for different types of organizations over the past decade or so. If we take a step back and look at the data platform itself, a decade ago probably everybody was they had some kind of data warehouse, relational, and then when they reached the limits of a relational data warehouse, they started doing columnar models using enterprise tools like AS, etc. And then came along Hadoop and big data. So a lot of deployments of data lakes, enterprise data lakes in Hadoop, in Cloudera and Hortonworks, so on and so forth. And these days, people have started doing, with the object storage as the center. People are building a lot of data lakes. The reason I'm talking about all of these is the problems related to acquiring, maintaining, managing, finding, and using data for an organization are not completely solved yet, right? So it is still, there are too many data sources, too many types of data, different custodians of data, how they make this data available to to a certain extent. Systems like the data lake and the lake house architectures now are supposed to address them. But then I wanted to bring all of your attention to the complexity involved in achieving a full-fledged data lake or a usable data lake, right? There were a couple of our customers in the past um, who had multiple data sources like this, and then they started thinking that, hey, let's just ingest all of this data, uh, from SAP systems, from the in-house CRM systems. Let's just first bring the data, because some of them were not even aware of what all types of data is available in the organization that could help them come up with meaningful business insights, etc. Right? So the next logical step is to just build a central data lake, and then ingest all of the data. Now, a year later, they realized that, with this approach, they realized that they had now one more data system to manage, namely the data lake or the lake house. And then, there is obviously the bill related to it, but zero business value out of all of this. So how do we go about then looking at extracting the value out of the data that the business generates? I think we have to work backwards. You have to look at the end result, and then take a look at what type of data sources are necessary to achieve this end result, and then you will be able to achieve some value faster. And this is exactly where platforms like UBIX will make a lot of sense. So, John, if you want to
Yeah.
talk more.
Thank, thank you, RK. What you were telling also shows in the numbers here. As far as looking at the trends since 2019, you can see that the biggest thing, if green is like the current state, right? You haven't seen progress, right? Yeah, and so in some critical areas, right, of transformation, and what whether it was Hortonworks or Cloudera, now both Cloudera, it's Snowflake or anything, right? It is just another way of storing data somewhere, right? But value is not created in storage, right? They all sold the promise of these great analytical capabilities and stuff like that, but then what they delivered was storage, right? And a lot of times they deliver a data swamp, right? Because they're losing context to the data, right? They're abandoning the source, right? They're pulling in CSV files and stuff like that. These are all pitfalls to progress, right? So, our approach is about connecting directly to source and creating a mirror of that environment so that you have kind of all of your data in a data playground. But the purpose is not for just storage for storage sake, right? All the values created in solving the problems, right? And so we're going to talk a little bit more about the various different use cases, but you want to immediately get from storage right into solving problems, building applications, creating a thinking system like using reinforcement learning, right? So you have things that actually bring to life that real AI type experience that everyone wants, right? And one of the points that RK mentioned that I want to drive home is that we've all fallen in love with the generative AI movement, right? And its amazing capabilities. But when you specifically look at business, right? Because if you look at, our partners, Google or, Microsoft or whomever, those, they're trying to attack the world of information. So they've brought ChatGPT and Gemini to life to really be that new source of search, right? How do you access the different information? How do you allow it to summarize things and be able to provide some greater insights about the world, right? But then when you start positioning that, you say, and I absolutely love it, right? It's an amazing discovery, right? But when you shift gears to business, those generative AI using large language models are a very finite number of use cases, right? Because those language models are not going to help you understand your demand of your business better. It's not going to understand kind of when you're, missing out on opportunities associated with inventory lapses, right? Or that you continue to have closeouts every year, but keep reforecasting those, right? So when we talk about AI, generative AI is something we completely embrace, and our product's called Chat UBIX, right? But UBIX is in the generative complex problem solving, right? So if you're going to solve a problem, right, such as demand planning, you're going to basically be leveraging, inventory data, customer information, sales order history, invoices, et cetera, right? Purchase orders, right? All these different things that are usually in your ERP system or some inventory management system, as well as external data that is indices that understand kind of indicators of demand or shrinking demand, right? So those are things that you can all pull into UBIX and start playing with. But you also have the workflows that are known, right? So you're going to basically be able to use time series for forecasting, right? You're going to be using, a model like in UBIX that understands replacement products, because a lot of times seasonal products have a replacement, et cetera, right? So in order to use that history for forecasting, you have to match those, right? So elegant ways of solving problems quickly, right? And then once we solve that problem, we teach Chat UBIX how to solve it using things like regression and time series and clustering for customer segmentation. Those are amazing capabilities that are squarely in that machine learning area, right? That are much more powerful in business than language models, right? Language models are amazing for capturing intent and being able to interact with you and give you that magical type feeling. But they're not, great with a lot of the structured data pursuits that really drive your business value. And being a reformed public company CFO and COO, I know the accounting at a very detailed level, right? Most business cases are solved using non-language models, using structured data, using subject matter expertise and known mathematics, right? That are not part of language models, right? So I think, our basically looking at our product mix, probably about 7 or 8% are more unstructured language model type pursuits, and 93% are basically structured data, right? From your accounting system, from your CRM system, from your inventory system, right? Those are all structured data pursuits, and other machine learning techniques are far more powerful than those, right? And then if you look at a capability such as reinforcement learning, you have all these different techniques, so you can create a thinking system on top of any business process or use case, right? So those are much more powerful technologies than language models. But there's been a big love affair that is been drawn up, and we love it, right? But when you actually get into first thing we do with a customer is, what problems are you struggling with, right? Because the technology that you use is dependent upon the challenge that you have, right? And so the answer may be a language model, but it also may be a time series model or reinforcement learning or any other aspect, or even some smattering of NLP to interpret all the crazy notes that go into a CRM system from your salespeople, right? And understand really, customer sentiment and things like that. So I think there's amazing toolbox of AI technologies, and you should be thinking more about what problems you have, and look to experts like UBIX and Searce to kind of help you on that journey to find the right answer to your right problem.
Yeah, we covered some of these in the previous slide during, while discussing the previous slide. So, depending on what kind of this organization is, you will have, if you are in a large enterprise kind of organization, you can't really wait, for multiple months to acquire this data and go through all of the necessary security related approvals, etc., to bring fruition to one of your ideas related to generative AI, right? And that's because of the how the enterprise data lakes, etc., are built. And with tools like UBIX, platforms like UBIX, while you have your data already on GCP in GCS buckets, it makes it like really trivial to consume it directly from one of the services, and quickly try things out, instead of actually waiting to look at a compliant service which is available natively or in open source, and trying to understand how to work with it and see if it really solves your problem, so on and so forth. So those are some of the problems. John, if you have more.
Yeah, I kind of jumped ahead a little bit and covered some of these things in the challenges area, but but the nice thing is about all the things that you probably had to go and build on your own 7, 8 years ago, you don't have to do that anymore, right? But I would just caution you to say, if someone's pitching you on build, they're not an AI, they're an infrastructure player, right? If they're pitching you on things that help your data scientists, they're again data science tools. They're not a platform that's in the AI, because AI was not built for the data scientist. AI was built for everyone, right? It was everyone should be able to use AI. When you thought of when I was a kid, when you had the sci-fi robot in the movies, when you asked it a question, it didn't say, well, give me a team of data scientists, data engineers, data analysts, Kubernetes experts, and Docker, and let me build a cloud and do all these different things, and give me $22 million and I'll give you an answer in 24 months, right? It just gave you an answer, right? And so UBIX is very close to that robot, right? Is that you don't have to think about any of that other stuff, right? It's solved in there, right? And Searce helped us bring it to life within GCP. And so the infrastructure and your infrastructure partners are extremely important in that journey. So I'm just trying to say is, if you want to be an AI, look to a company like UBIX and Searce and their partnership to get you there quick, because we won't ever talk to you about infrastructure and other things like that. You'll just get to the benefits of using and so all of these 3 bullets are the history, right? It doesn't have to be your story. RK, you want me to take this one? And so from a data experience perspective, I use this as kind of like really democratization, right? You'll hear the term democratization used way too often, right? But what it really means is that people of all levels can use this, right? So that's the whole benefit of AI. AI is supposed to be, it doesn't matter if you're a developer or you're an accountant, right? Or a marketer, right? You should be able to use this to get answers to your desires, right? On top of your data, right? And, looking at kind of, we talked about kind of the data ecosystem, right? UBIX has 300 plus ready-built connectors, right? Which is really in that 300, probably 95% of the world of connections within the enterprise, right? We also have our partnership with Kyndryl, where we actually talk to mainframe data, right? So whether it's your DB2 data or your vSAM, right? We can work with all of that and now create a data playground on top of legacy infrastructure. And so the data ecosystem is extremely important, but it again does not have to be hard, right? You should be able to get that up and running by things like UBIX that have built it out and done the hard work for you. And looking at kind of like the data economy, it's like I view it slightly differently in that it's what it means to you, right? It's how do you use your data to solve your problems, right? That's the data economy that you need to care about, right? And because data is a very powerful asset, and a lot of people have said in our past, well, my data is bad or anything like that. We have not found in a single project that we couldn't deliver extremely good value on top of what was considered bad data, right? Because a lot of that value is in your invoicing, the items you sell, your inventory, your customers, right? You have good data there, right? When you're thinking about some things around the edge, right, you may need to get a little organized in certain areas to kind of accomplish that. But your data is not bad, right? And so your core, usually in those core systems of record, there's tons of use cases that can be untapped, right, and get there quickly. The need for no-code democratization AI, the reason UBIX exists. So next slide, please. So this is kind of, I was a Chutes and Ladders fan as a kid, right? So it's a board game, from back in the 70s, right? And maybe before, right? But, so what we talked about, you heard a lot of these stories around drowning in data from multiple sources, high cost to code and organize, result often unusable for leaders. And there's a lot of times that piece, if you're coding things and everything like that, is that there's a huge, sometimes subject matter experts are not good at translating requirements to technical people, right? And so one of the things about democratization is if you give the subject matter expert that knows how to solve the problem a tool that they can use to solve the problem, you have zero loss in translation because they know the expertise, right? So the benefit of democratization is not only that you empower more people to solve problems, right? But you're also putting it in the hands of the people that have the knowledge, right? And so you have different subject matter experts in your organization. Empower them with a tool that they can actually give you the actual right solution with no loss in translation and no blame game between the subject matter expert and the poor data scientists and developers, right? And then you can't get timely or historical data. We've come into projects where we've solved within a few weeks that had been going for 15 months, right? And so it's like, and so there is a time threshold for when things are usable, because if something's too slow, you've missed the market, right? And you've missed the goal, and you've got project fatigue and frustration within your organization. So if you are a technical team, you also benefit from the solving this problem, right? And UBIX and Searce help you do that, right? And one of the things, one more plug about democratization, I've run the IT teams in companies for the last 25 years, right? So the IT teams have a lot of burden, right? I'm a big fan of them. I love engineers. I love them solving problems. And they've got an unfair, daunting task on them, right? Because you've got, let's say, 5 to 7% of the staff in a company are IT and technical people, right? Focusing on handling business information. So you've got all these baby birds chirping for information that are 95% of the workforce. And they're basically asking for 5% of the workforce to deliver everything for them, right? That's crazy, right? So the democratization also helps IT organization. It allows the IT organization to offboard the 80% of the requests that the 95% of the people can solve themselves, right? And so with UBIX, they can solve that, right? And inside of our data space product, you control, as the IT organization, who has access to what data and permissions, right? So you're in control of your data management policy, but you can empower people within the organization that have subject matter expertise to solve their own problems, which frees up the IT organization to focus on the most critical tasks. We also think you should choose UBIX for those critical tasks, but it allows you to very much focus in on those. So even if you want to remove the 80% of the workloads that are on your plate and use UBIX, it's a great benefit. Next slide, please. And this is the chutes and ladders thing, right? So it's like, this is where you kind of shoot down with UBIX to get to the, rapid innovation and iteration, right? So these are all the things that UBIX can solve, because we dissected the problem solving. And inside of UBIX, when you're taking on a use case, all of the different no-code components that we call actions that you take on data are the anatomy of problem solving. So we've got hundreds of different types of actions you can take within the system, but it can be used across many use cases, right? So if you have a use case that you want solved, we've got the anatomy of the problem across all these core functionalities reduced down to where we can string together custom workflows lightning fast and bring something to life, right? And we also have the application builder and the runtime environment called solution space, right? So you can bring in not only the analytic workflows to life, but solution space to life that your non-technical users and the beneficiaries of that information utilize within a runtime environment. Next slide, please. And, I know that I've been quite verbose talking about these different pieces, and I want to save enough time for question and answers. But the thing that you want to take from this slide around our solution is that we meet you where you are, right? We work with mainframe, which everyone talked about was going away for many, many decades, right? It's still here. It's still strong. It's still a great piece of the infrastructure. And in this current economy, you don't really want to move off of mainframe, right? You want to modernize on mainframe and take those analytic workflows that you're using, maybe SAS for on top of mainframe. You can make that inside of UBIX and start solving those problems with that, right? And you also we have companies that have grown through acquisition, right? They have 4 different ERP systems, 3 different CRM systems, right? UBIX doesn't care, right? Those are just new data sources to come bring in and use in a workflow to harmonize that information, right? And so there's just so many ways in which, there's just a better way to solving these problems. And we meet you where you are, right? You don't have to change anything. You don't have to say, well, I'd love to get UBIX, but I have to implement my new ERP system. You don't have to do that. Like you may want to choose to do that eventually, right? But that's a different business decision. You can get to analytical outcomes now. All right, the fun part. RK, I've been talking a lot. Do you want to kick this one off?
Yeah, I think some of the use cases that we have delivered in this year especially, I can name some, and all of these can be achieved on the UBIX platform. For example, we've built an AI-powered Q&A engine where you can basically ask questions related to the workings of certain division in an organization, etc. So that's one use case. There was a legal tech company which assisted the early stage startups, basically with their initial paperwork, etc. So one of the components was for them to also give automated, so to take certain inputs and generate the logos in an automated manner. This legal tech company was providing this service for their clients, and we kind of automated that using the Gen AI models. So that's another use case. There was another customer for whom there was an internal SWML based application where it was taking a lot of time for their engineering teams to kind of add more features and then for the upkeep, etc. We have sped up the process by generating code. Basically, we built a code generation bot with AI assisted one. That's another. And then for another organization, information spread across multiple PDFs, and then the user related information generally is in the database, in a relational database, right? So sometimes you have to look up information from PDFs and other document types, and also take a look at your database for certain facts and then return results, right? So a RAG based application, a virtual assistant we have built, that's another. And then similarly for a insurance kind of company, they had backlog of huge amounts of data in doing the KYC. That means basically scan through all of the documents which they collected from their end users and then extract data out of it so that it can be exposed as an API, so on and so forth. So these were some of the use cases that we have done, and all of these are possible. You can achieve them on UBIX too. And one of the other things John was talking about, about them meeting where you are. Generally, if you deploy this solution on GCP, these are basically GKE clusters. That's where these workspaces, etc., run. Everything else is familiar if you're already running stuff on GCP. The same, GKE cluster, Google Cloud Storage, GCS buckets, etc. So it can just fit right into your rest of the workflow easily. So yeah.
Great. Thank you, RK. Yeah, I'll share a couple examples. So I would say a lot of, again, around the problem space, right? So we focus more, all we do is AI and we use all the different capabilities, right? So, but if you look at kind of a big thing is demand planning, demand forecasting, production scheduling, procurement planning, right? Making sure your procurement optimization. So across both commodities to meat producers, specialty meal co-packers, right? Retail, fashion, all those things have different challenges. It's similar techniques that you use inside of UBIX to solve them, but they're still very custom to your data, your experience, et cetera, and your problem, right? And it is using a number of different techniques, right? So, regression to understand kind of, the time to delivery from a vendor, right? A time series looking at getting demand right. Clustering to understand customer segments, right? Because a lot of times when you're forecasting, you want to forecast based on customer type and product, right? Because different buying behaviors in those customer types, right? So you can get a much more refined forecast, right? And so all of these things are very powerful tools. But then what I would say, the thing that's not talked about enough, which we are pioneers in bringing to life, is this no code capability of bringing reinforcement learning to life, right? And reinforcement learning is the thing that you need to know about, right? Language models have gotten, way too much attention, right? And they're still and I love them, right? So don't get me wrong, but they're just not as powerful for your business pursuits, right? And so, so reinforcement learning, you can train this baby robot how to observe, how to take action, how to be rewarded, and over time send it through a lifetime within hours, right? To where now it's intelligent and smart and knows how to solve that problem consistently based on real-time information coming in, right? And reinforcement learning, if you look at the application of it, has been used in autonomous driving cars, right? And it basically has been used to beat the greatest chess masters, right? So, it's much better at chess than humans, right? Because it's been learned all the different variations of moves and knows how to counteract an ever-changing environment. So it's very much in the decision science area, right? And what is business? Business is us taking data to make better informed decisions, right? So I would say that's an area that you guys have to pay strong attention to. UBIX is farther along in that journey than anyone else. And so if that's of interest to you, you should definitely talk to us. And so now what is in UBIX, right? So this is the stack that you get within an hour of signing up with UBIX, right? So you got something that normally would take 18 months to try and string together, but I guarantee I've seen those ones that have been built over 18 and 24 months, and they're probably at about 20% of the functionality of UBIX, right? But the big challenge is once you've built those homegrown clouds, you have to maintain them, right? You have to keep updated. You have to look at, making sure that your models are not out of date, right? And all these different things that you're going to have to kind of maintain and evolve, UBIX does automatically for you. So it's a turnkey kind of experience giving you all the benefit. But you have a couple different things as kind of that business user. The chat UBIX is a really cool addition to where you can do a few different things. You can any connected system that you have to your to UBIX, you can immediately start asking questions of it. Like what are my top selling products? What are my customers most likely to attrit, right? And you also have the ability to rapidly innovate applications, right? Custom applications for your business pursuit in solution space, right? And if you want to use UBIX, like we do a bunch of digital marketing analytics use cases. So you have data streaming into our environment. It's interpreting and predicting, let's say, fraud or bot detection or likelihood of abandonment. You can take those through our Insights API, to your content management system to drive change in session, right? So we've got also the real-time capability. And then all of the other spaces are foundational that you see here that are critical to your data store, your modeling environment, your production environment, and your connection library. And one thing that I do want to call out it's a new partner of ours is called Telium, right? So we've got 311 built out connectors that can be used across enterprise systems. Our connector now to Telium gives us access to almost 1,200 digital marketing companies, right? So if you're using one of those digital marketing companies and Telium, we can work with that data and build out cool use cases. So I think we've gobbled up the very significant majority of the global market from a standpoint of connectors. So if there's a system you have, we can talk to it and get up and running. But we also build out new connectors for free if there's a very specific use case.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that, John. This was really insightful for me to hear kind of the UBIX approach to solving what is a pretty challenging, a pretty universal challenge that organizations are facing. And so we did have a few questions in here. It looks like one has already been answered, but just to highlight it really quickly, RK, thanks for jumping in and answering that. But somebody was asking about those widespread organizational challenges that we highlighted to start. There's, I think, 3 bullets, and they were asking if a data mesh architecture could be designed to solve those problems. And I believe, RK, you mentioned that, no, this isn't a coincidence that we highlighted those problems, or that it probably is. It is something that you could solve. What would you, do you have any other comments that you would like to elaborate on that?
No, so basically, it was actually, what was depicted on the slide could be solved with a data mesh approach. But, these terms are used often interchangeably by different customers depending on their environments, right? So that's why we didn't put that. But if you actually take a look at the other approach that we suggested of looking at the end outcome and then working backwards to solve the problem, right? So for example, if you spin up a workspace in UBIX, you have a problem and you identified a data source, you're essentially actually building a spoke in an environment of, there is a central hub and then there are multiple spokes, etc. So the answer to your question is yes, Norm. These challenges could be solved using a data mesh. But because we were talking more about UBIX as the platform, we didn't delve deeper into the properties of data mesh, etc. So, yeah.
Thanks for that explanation. I think you mentioned something that leads into another one of the questions that was asked, which is like defining the problem. And one of the challenges that I know I've seen, and I was just on a call with some executives and chief data officers and chief analytics officers around ROI. And hey, some of this stuff isn't fast. It's not cheap to do. How do we prove out ROI so that we can continue this investment and get on from just a pilot or a proof of concept?
Yeah, I mean, ROI is the most important thing, right? And that's why removing the barriers to get to a foundation, right? You're no longer in the infrastructure build game, you're in the problem solving game, right? And so if the historical projects that have largely failed in the past, 95% of the effort was spent and all the money was spent on infrastructure, right? And almost no time was spent on solving the problem, right? And so we've shifted that paradigm, right? Where you don't think about any of that stuff, right? You're 100% focused on solving the problems, and you've got subject matter expertise and expertise inside of UBIX and in our partner network that can help you solve those. But you also have the power internally also using a tool like UBIX to solve those powers, right? So those challenging projects, right? And so I think you get to ROI extremely fast, right? And I think in some use cases, it's harder to gauge ROI, right? Like, so if you look at some of the generative AI movement around RAG and what we have a process for creating a LLM expert, right? So we do LLM experts around your contract contracts or around your product information, right? So now you have a chatbot experience to ask questions about your products catalog and your around your contracts, et cetera, in a very secure environment, right? And so those are wonderful use cases. They give you benefit, but they're not as big of a benefit as reducing closeouts from 20% to 2%, right? Because closeouts rob you of all your profitability within certain product sectors, right? And everyone says, well, no, we've got that, we've got that mastered, right? There's certain stores called Nordstrom's Rack and stores called Marshalls and Ross. They exist because people get the demand forecasting wrong in a major way, right? Overstock wasn't created because people just wanted to sell last year's products for really cheap, right? And so I'm kind of poking fun of it, but it's a huge problem, right? And technologies like UBIX can help solve those problems.
And just to add to what John said, in the ROI part, if we can properly define the investment part of it, for example, to build a solution, to run it at production scale, etc. How much exactly are we spending, right? So some of these public cloud solutions which are kind of serverless, it is, this is experience from the field working with customers. It's difficult for us to estimate, translate the requirements into the number of calls that you make to the API and how much it would cost. So while I do not know the return on the investment part, I definitely know about the investment part, because if you can articulate exactly how much are you going to spend in running a solution, then it probably will be easier for us to, or you to convince a business that, hey, there is return on this investment, right? So I think to a certain extent, when you use tools like UBIX, you will have greater control on the pricing. That's one of my other observations.
Yeah, I think that's great. Basically controlling the cost from the start, understanding what that'll cost, finding ways to accelerate the time to value. It sounds with platforms like UBIX, so you avoid spending all your time and money on the infrastructure, and then getting to those real business outcomes is key, I think. That brings me to another point too with ROI. There's a lot of things that can derail adoption of an AI solution. We've talked a lot about, like, is your data ready? Do you have a good plan? Do you have the budget? But what about the human side of things? That's the next question that I see, is asking about how do you manage the organizational change needed to implement AI powered solutions like these?
Yeah, I think our answer to that was the three buckets that were at the top of that architecture diagram, right? Chat UBIX being able to ask it to solve problems for you, right? So Chat UBIX can not just give you access to your analytical environment of talking to your data sources, but it also can actually, for problems that it's solved that are germane to your industry and your types of data, it can actually go and solve a problem for you, right? Like, so build me a forecast, right? So it's generative complex problem solving. Do a regression model on my server usage and, what is the most predictive, best memory that I should be provisioning within my network, right? And build a regression model that you can bring to life and have that help in your network, right? And so it's those, types of use cases that are very interesting, but and then you have solution space because you're bringing basically BI on top of AI, right? So you've got an application that is what people are used to working with, right? People are used to applications, right? So you can make AI digestible, but you have to give it to them in a form factor that's usable to them, right? So all those people know is that now I'm working with a demand forecasting application that's much more intelligent and making recommendations on when to buy certain cuts of meat at the right time because the price and the demand are matching up nicely, right? And so it's like, it's those type of things, is that you're just now inviting a more intelligent application to life, right? And then the Insights API is that we basically work with most of the ERP systems. And so you can actually make that existing system more intelligent, right? So you're opening a credit and collection screen and you've got a fraud, basically a default score, right? That you're now in there that allows them to make better decisions on to extend credit, et cetera, based on their paying behaviors, the industry they're in, the slow pay trend. You can come up with these things. You can make dumb systems intelligent, right? So that's really how we've attacked solving the problems, because we solve problems every day for businesses, right? And so we care about the business and solving their problems. So we've got an answer to how we can bring these things to life. It's not some chatbots that's sitting over here that people are kind of using, right? It becomes a critical part of your infrastructure, and it talks to all of your critical infrastructure.
Yeah, that's good insight, and I think making sure that you're solving the big problems for people, because there's two reasons people like change. Mostly they don't, but it's if they're in so much pain that they have to change, or the dream is so great that they can't resist it, is the two things I like to say. And so if you could come to somebody and say, hey, what if I could make sure that your shirts don't end up at Ross on sale for a huge discount? Would you like that? Yes. Great. Have I got a solution for you? That's a lot less scary than, hey, I'm going to use AI to do your job type thing. Awesome. Well, I do want to get to an offer that we have for everybody because we're coming up on time. So I want to thank everybody for attending and let everyone know that you can schedule a free analytics workshop with us, with UBIX and Searce. We'll talk about leveraging GCP credits or any underutilized consumption commitments to help really transform your business. So let's use the stuff that you've already got, or maybe get some credits. And then we'll also can talk a little bit about modernizing your legacy infrastructure as well. So we'll be following up post-event to offer this workshop and to get that scheduled for everybody that's interested. We'll also be sending out the recording of this early next week once we've had a chance to edit it and get it available for everybody. But with that, I'd like to thank our presenters today. John and RK, thank you very much for sharing your insights with us. I think I learned a lot, I know, and I hope everybody here did as well.
Thanks, David. And RK, great connecting with you again.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
And thank you, Searce.
Yes. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Great to everyone.